Excellent. Well, welcome along everybody to this Microsoft 365 May session. The first thing I'd like to call out is the support of the sponsors of these events. So again, take a moment to have a look at all the sponsors here. Please support them. They have supported this event, and that's a way that you can provide thanks to them for their investment in what is being achieved here across the month of May. A second very special thanks to the organisers of the event. They have worked behind the scenes tirelessly to bring all these sessions to you in an utmost professional manner. Most of you will probably not be aware of that, not see that. It is working seamlessly here, and it's a big shout out to them. So again, if you do get the opportunity, please thank the organisers. They put a huge amount of work into this, and it is on their own time and on their own dollar. They do have normal day jobs on top of this. So again, a big shout out of thanks to them as well. Finally, I'd like to thank everybody for turning up and attending these sessions. Without you, these sessions really aren't as powerful as they are. So again, with that, thank you very much to all those people, and let's get on with our session. So my name is Robert Crane. I'm a business analyst with a technology background that is focused on helping businesses get the most out of their Microsoft Cloud investment and doing that securely. You can find out more details about me in the link in the lower right-hand corner there. You can also hit me up on the socials if you want to reach out. So our session today is going to look at getting more information, deeper insights into our Microsoft 365 tenant. And that really is very important this day and age, because so many of our users and our important data is residing there in our tenants in the Microsoft Cloud. Now, I'll look to answer any questions that are thrown up towards the end of the session, so I can just keep the flow going. But by all means, if you do have questions, please type them in there. I will see them and look to answer them towards the end of the session. So with that, why don't we start? Now, the idea here is that good security is about providing and following a framework. Now, Microsoft has already developed an approach for us. Their approach is to detect, classify, protect, and monitor across devices, cloud, and on-prem. So that's the framework that Microsoft provides. And in this case, for today's session, we're going to be focusing largely on that fourth pillar. We're going to be looking at some of the ways that Microsoft provides us the ability to monitor our environments, which is going to be very, very important for the security aspect. Now, importantly, don't overlook the fact that the technologies that Microsoft provide around security for our tenants are quite extensive. They work across the complete kill chain here. So we're talking things like Office 365 ATP, Defender ATP, Azure AD Identity Protection, Azure ATP, and the one that we'll be focusing on today will be Cloud App Security in the top right-hand corner there. So we're going to spend probably the majority of our time talking about that, teasing out the benefits, teasing out what this product can do and how it can be added to the stack to really give you deeper insights. Now, why do we need all this? Well, hopefully everybody should be well aware that we face a very challenging world these days, and the number of attacks, unfortunately, aren't decreasing. They're actually on the increase here. So this is a standard slide from a Microsoft presentation that's already out of date, no doubt, but you'll see that these percentages just keep growing. And as people have now moved to working remotely, working away from the office, these numbers are going to continue to increase. And the major attacks that we see are around phishing attacks, password spray, and the breach replay. So keep all of this in mind, that yes, it's great to move to the cloud, it's great to provide this, but it doesn't mean that we can abdicate the need to secure our environment and monitor it to make sure that our users are able to do what they need to do, but also do it securely. Now, this has largely come about because of a change in the environment that we see today. The change is that in the good old days, we used to have largely on-prem environments that were protected by a UTM, a firewall device. That was the choke point that all our users accessed their information either inside the network in a controlled space, or they did so across a firewall and a monitoring device that we could easily control. The reality now is that that firewall is no longer the perimeter. The perimeter is the user. Okay, so we have users who are now working from home, working from coffee shops, working on their phone, working all over the place. Now, that unique challenge brings a multitude of endpoints here. So as you see, we have endpoints of our home office. We've even got wearable stuff now. We still have on-prem, and we have largely a growth in mobile devices. And we're seeing more and more third-party providers, SaaS providers, that are also integrating into a customer environment. How do we manage, monitor, maintain, and secure those multiple environments quickly and easily across the stack is going to be a major challenge in this new world. Now, remember that the growth of those endpoints create opportunities for malicious attackers outside that environment to potentially look to get inside and exploit that, typically for monetary gain. So all of those endpoints, those PCs, those users are going to be subject to some form of attack. And we see that now more so than ever as people move into their home environment. They probably haven't got a machine maybe that is locked down as they used to in a corporate environment. They have mobile devices on a variety of platforms in a variety of different states with a variety of apps installed. All of these present opportunities potentially for attackers to exploit and look to take advantage of inside an organization. So we really have an extremely challenging environment now when it comes to security in this day and age. Now, the good thing about all this is that in the Microsoft stack, what we have is underlying all of this is what's called the intelligent security graph. Now, what that means is that all the signals that are generated by logins, by access to different files, to requests to do anything, is basically captured and recorded inside the security graph. The security graph also looks at the interactions between people, their data, their devices. This is something that we can take advantage of. So all of this is being collected for all our users on a regular basis. And you will see here that there are huge numbers which you would expect with the Microsoft environment. Now, this is why I would suggest the Microsoft environment is superior, because it's going to have that ability to leverage their cloud technology, leverage their scale to basically digest all of these signals and then analyze them and look for things that are untoward, look for things that we should be paying attention, but give us the ability to go in and query that and look at our own specifications, our own custom queries on top of that. But remember, all of this information is being accumulated, and you, if you're administrating or you want to know more information about your tenant, you can tap into this across the Microsoft range of products. Now, I think where Microsoft, again, has a major advantage over other vendors is simply the integration. So all of the signals we see here from the endpoint, Windows 10, to Office 365, Microsoft 365, Azure, and so on, are feeding into this one security graph that we can all tap into. So again, that's making a huge pool of data that we can access quickly and easily. Now, as I mentioned, one of the major changes, one of the thought process that needs to change is we now need to think of identity as the center of security. We need to protect our users above and beyond anything else, because our users are the ones logging into devices. Our users are the ones who are accessing data in remote locations, potentially on machines that may not be compliant. So we need to look at primarily protecting the user and thinking of the user as the center of security rather than perhaps a traditional workstation. Now, identity is important because this is where breaches come from. Okay, so an attacker is going to go and send an email to a user and say, can I please have your login and your password? And unfortunately, many users happily give that up to an attacker who can then log into that account from anywhere on the web and access that information and play havoc inside the organization. Now, the traditional approach to identity with passwords and user credentials is becoming harder and harder for users to manage because they need a different set of credentials and better passwords across a variety of platforms. So again, most users are going to find that tough. They're going to struggle with that as the number of systems scale. So they're going to start using duplicate passwords, or they're going to use very common passwords, password 123, for example. And that means that an attacker can potentially find those passwords through data breaches or, again, other users' common passwords, and then use those as an attack in an automated way. Now, the other one here is that employees are using non-approved apps in work. So this is known as shadow IT. If we put too much resistance in front of a user or prevent them from doing their job, today they can just sign up to a free consumer-based web program and get their job done. So we have to be very aware that we do need to secure the environment, which is a tough ask, no question. But we also have to allow our users to get their jobs done, because if we don't, they'll just go somewhere else. They'll use something less secure and not tell us about it. And that, again, puts the organization under threat. Now, the central point for managing identity in the Microsoft 365 space is going to be Azure AD. All of the services are built on a common identity model, a common identity platform being Azure AD. Now, the great thing about Azure AD is we can interface that to our on-prem Windows server. We can integrate that to other on-prem infrastructure like Linux servers or whatever. We then can use those credentials in the Microsoft Cloud, CRM, Office 365, Intune, and so on. And we can also integrate those with non-cloud providers as well. So maybe Salesforce, Dropbox, and that can also be integrated to Azure AD. So the user is still logging into those third-party applications using their Azure AD credentials. And finally, we have the ability to manage and control this also on devices which are probably roaming around our environment, mobile phones that are connected wirelessly to the environment. So Azure AD is really the key point here when it comes to understanding what's happening inside and getting insight inside our environment. Now, when we start building up this ability to have insight, deeper insights into our environment, the place we need to start is we need to make sure that we have all the logging capabilities within our tenant enabled and turned on and basically ramped up to the max so we can get all the information that we want. And the important thing to remember here is by turning on these logs, there is generally not any additional cost to you. They are generally not turned on and turned on to the max to obviously save a bit of disk space for Microsoft, because if you're not using them, then why should they be turned on by default? So my first step in the process would be to go and look at turning on the variety of logs that are available to you. Now, the most important log that you need to turn on that will filter into everything else we're going to talk about is going to be the unified audit log. And I'll show you in the demo here how we can get to that, how you turn that on. But this is the key log that you need to make sure is turned on. Now, when you visit that page, and if you see at the top there a banner that indicates that logging is not turned on, you need to press the button there, I would suggest, and turn audit logging on. Now, that's not going to impact your tenant. The users aren't going to know any different, but it's going to allow you to be able to produce reports like this. You're going to be able to go in and query your interactions inside the tenant. You're going to be able to filter those results. You're going to be able to potentially export those results to something like Excel to allow you to manipulate, view, filter, sort, and so on. So the very first thing I'd recommend is you have a look, and you can see the URL down the bottom there if you want to go to it directly rather than navigating to that location through your admin console. Go in and make sure your audit log searching is enabled for your tenant. Now, the other thing to appreciate here is that there are different audit log retention periods based on the licensing that you have. So what you'll see is basically out of the box with Microsoft 365 typically and Office 365, we have Azure AD Basic, and you'll see that the audit logs are normally only 7 days at maximum. Now, when we add things like Azure AD P1 and Azure AD P2, we are going to be able to extend those logging periods out to potentially 30, if not 90 days. All right, so if you do have Microsoft 365 Business Premium, you will now have included Azure AD P1, which means your log ability will be 30 days. If you have Microsoft 365 E5, you will have Azure AD P2 included in that environment, which means that your logs potentially have been extended out to 90 days. And there is a URL that you can access to read up more specific details on that. Now, I'll make sure that the slides for this presentation are made available directly after this event. I'll put them up, do a blog post, and again, they'll be available for you to download. I'll also provide them to the organisers so they can be made available in an aggregated manner. So don't worry necessarily about having to grab the details there. Now, once we have our logs done, now remember, I've just shown you that one major log. There are logs for things like email, SharePoint, Teams. Make sure that you go in, find all those logs, make sure they're turned on to the maximum to give you that capability to view that low-level data. But once we've turned on our logs, we need to now say, okay, those logs are great, we're capturing that detail, but how do we know when something's happening? Now, again, out of the box, every tenant, you are provided with what's called protection alerts. Now, the protection alerts that are provided in your tenant by default will vary. If you have a look at your protection alerts, you'll see there are basically two different styles. You'll see the one at the bottom in bold, that is what's known as a system protection alert. That is provided by Microsoft, and the number of those will vary depending on the tenant subscription that you have. Now, on top of those that are provided by Microsoft, you can go in and add your own protection alerts in a customized manner. Okay, so you can go in and say, look, I want to know when, for example, a new SharePoint site collection is created, which generally means a new team has been created. Maybe I want to know when there is malware in files. I want to know those alerts. Now, again, you can customize that to suit your environment. You can set that up to alert you on email, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, a whole range of features. You can create as many of those alerts as you want. Now, also be aware that in the Microsoft environment inside your tenant, there will also be something called activity alerts. These are older style alerts, and generally there are no activity alerts by default in the environment. So you need to go in and create these to suit your environment. And there are the example of some of the typical ones that I would go in. So I would go in and put in one, for example, to know if someone adds a custom domain to my environment. Maybe if somebody's sharing anonymous links, I want to know about it because maybe they're trying to exfiltrate data. So again, make sure you put in the alerts that make sense. Now, on the other side of the coin is be careful you don't overload yourself with too many alerts. It's all well and good to have all of these alerts set up and ramped up to the max, but at the end of the day, if you're getting thousands of emails into your mailbox, which really aren't telling you a great deal or overloading you, then they don't have a lot of value. So again, this is a balance here. We need to choose the balance that works for us. Now, out of the box, a lot of this has to be done manually, and we want to use some Microsoft technologies to make that load easier, to give us that ability to analyze those logs and give us the results rather than us having to dig into them one by one by one. So if you aren't aware, we are also running with Microsoft May 365 a competition. All right, so this is week 1. Now, my understanding is that what you need to do is pull out your phone, grab that QR code and fill in the details there, and there will be a prize for every week. Again, if you haven't got your phone handy or you missed the QR code, you can always view the recording, which will be available. As I said, there'll be a prize every week. So again, I'll give you a moment to grab that. Not sure what the prize is, but I can probably safely guess it's not going to be a cruise. So again, go in there and have a look at that. And I wish everybody luck with that competition. So by all means, take advantage of that, grab the code, or view it on any of the recordings after the fact from any of the presenters. Now, we need to monitor all this stuff. It's all well and good to have these logs being generated, and potentially we can get thousands of these logs a day, depending on the number of users inside your tenant. We need to find that one needle in the haystack. How do we do that quickly, easily, and effectively? Well, Microsoft has a technology, a service called Cloud App Security. All right, so the definition of it is a multi-mode security broker. All right, it's going to give us this insight we're looking for inside our identity and also our data and our activities. Okay, now the good thing about this is we can also go in and we can take actions on any of the results basically that occur. Okay, so the idea here is that we use this over the top as a monitoring process, and there are some requirements there. Basically, you just need a tenant to do that. Now, in a little bit more detail here, what is Cloud App Security? Well, we can use it to, for example, look at basically look for a malicious insider, okay? And we can look for things like malware, ransomware, rogue applications, data exfiltration, and compromised accounts. Now, again, that may be something that we need to look at across a range of events, right? So we need to think of incidents. Now, incidents can be groups of events. So an event may be, oh, we've detected a failed password attempt on this machine. Well, that may not be an indicator by itself. We may need to look at the failed password attempt across multiple machines and multiple services. So this is where things like Cloud App Security give us that ability to look across all that information. Now, how do we go about getting that? Now, there are a couple of different versions of this technology. The first version is called Cloud App Discovery. And to get Cloud App Discovery, you will need to have a tenant that has Azure AD P1 included. Now, if you have Microsoft 365 Business Premium, you'll get Cloud App Discovery. If you have Microsoft 365 E5, you're going to get the more powerful option, which I'll come to. But if you don't have any of those, if you have Office 365 and you don't have Cloud App Security, you can add Azure AD P1 and you can get Cloud App Discovery, which is the basic offering. The next step up will be the Office 365 Cloud App Security. So that is also available as an add-on. So typically you would purchase this as an add-on. They are Australian pricing in there. Go and check your own subscription options there to see what the costs are for you. And the final one, the more powerful one with all the features, is what's known as Microsoft Cloud App Security. Again, we will receive this typically with E5 SKUs, Microsoft 365 E5s. Basically, that will mean that you get all the features, all the functionality built in, but you can add it as a standalone option if you wish. Now, as I mentioned, you will get the slides. We don't need to go into the iChart offering here, but make sure that you are aware that there are differences between Cloud App Discovery. So you'll see here that on this page, Cloud App Discovery has all the features, while Office 365 Cloud App Security doesn't. Microsoft one does. Now, if we go to the second page, you'll basically see that now Cloud Discovery doesn't have the features, but Office 365 Cloud App Security does. So in essence, think of Cloud App Discovery, the AD version, as the most basic version, which has largely reporting and monitoring. And then you look at the Office 365 Cloud App Security, which is the next level up, has more features. And then the ultimate product, which has all of the features combined, is the Microsoft Cloud App Security. All right, and you'll get a copy of these slides, obviously, after the event. And I will give you a link to some resources at the end there that will take this to the relevant Microsoft documentation that you can go in and have a look at. Now, all of this is a little bit confusing for people, so hopefully if you go in and have a look at your Cloud App Security area, you will see this. Now, if you see this, you'll see that it's called Cloud App Security. If you go to the very top of the page, you'll notice and click on the cloud icon, you will see basically a cartoon man staring back at you with a set of binoculars. That is Cloud App Discovery. So if you see that, you've got Cloud App Discovery. If, however, you see the title up the top there as Office 365 Cloud App Security, then you've got the second option in the range there. Okay, so that's again how we can look at the differentiating. Very similar, but again, the naming up the top is different. Now, the premium offering is Cloud App Security, as you see in the page again, but the difference is you'll notice that there is an additional icon, a little dashboard icon up the top there that indicates it is the full version of that product. So again, remember, Cloud App Discovery comes with Azure AD P1. Office 365 Cloud App Security is an add-on, and then you have the Microsoft Cloud App Security, which is also the add-on, and that is the more full-featured version. So perhaps a little bit of confusion there around which product, but hopefully if you have a look at those screens, you'll be able to work out exactly which one. And of course, you can always go in and look at the licensing for the users to see what has been assigned to the environment. Now, with all that, let's actually get in and talk about this Cloud App Security environment. What I'll show you here is some screenshots to set the base, and then we'll jump out and show you some live stuff with a demo machine as well. Now, the place to start with Cloud App Security is going to basically be the templates area. So you fire up your Cloud App Security and you basically would go into the templates area. Now, the templates are pre-canned configurations that Microsoft has provided, and you'll see in there that we've got 14 in this case. You would then take those templates, you would then convert those into what's known as policies. All right, so what we would do then is we would take our provided templates from Microsoft. We would then create policies off this. Now you'll see that in this case, there are basically over 40 policies. Now, what that means is we take the basic Microsoft ones, we can customize them when we create them, but we can also go in and create our own custom policies. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, same thing as basically when you look at the alerts, we have a base level provided by Microsoft, and then we have our ability to customize that yourself. So in my example, I have set up a custom alert that I want to know when a global administrator logs into my tenant, but when they do so outside a predefined range of IP addresses. All right, so that's going to give me more information, and I can customize that down to suit my needs. All right, so we take from our templates, we create policies, we add our own policies, and then what happens is those policies will then generate alerts. So, for example, when someone logs in as an admin outside my environment, it will generate an alert inside my environment that I can then go and investigate. I can then receive an email about. I can take a predetermined action if I want. So the nuts and bolts of it are policies, right, templates into policies, and then into alerts and monitoring those alerts. Now, what are some examples of the sort of alerts that make sense for many organizations? So suspicious inbox rules. Why are there rules that are actually deleting emails or forwarding them outside the organization, right? What about unusual file sharing activity? Really, do you want people sharing 400, 500 files in one go? That's something you may need to pay attention to, right? What about the bulk deletion of files? Okay, so maybe somebody is trying to cover their tracks, who knows? We also have things like activity from suspicious IPs, anonymous IPs, and an infrequent country. So again, that is a very good indicator potentially that your users have had phishing attacks in their environment, and that may be a signal that you need to investigate further. All right, and all of these can be built in. All of these can be used in your cloud app security to give you more information about the environment. Now, you'll see here that I'm in here as an example, editing a policy. The policy, you put in a name, you put in a severity, and then in the middle there, this is largely a query. So you would say, okay, I want to know when the file name equals this, or when the IP address is without this range, or when this happens. So you create basically your own interactive query on the information that you're looking for, and then you can also take decisions around the governance. So if this alert does get tripped, how are we going to deal with that? You'll notice that we can also govern things like SaaS applications that are not necessarily in the Microsoft cloud, right? So these are the actions that can be taken. Now, not only does cloud app security give us the ability to manage these alerts, but you can also actually go in and just look at the activity. So again, if you go in and just look at your activity log, what's actually happening? It's all legitimate requests, let's hope. But you can now go in and you can say, well, that's interesting. All of these, this is a very popular file. This is happening. Again, what's actually happening day to day inside your environment. So not only does it allow me to present alerts based on those results, I can also go in and look at the day-to-day activity to give me more information. You'll see up the top there, again, we have the ability to go in and filter our results based on application, user, IP address, and the activity type. And then over on the left, we can actually save those queries and come back and repeat them on a regular basis. Now, if we drill into one of these activities, you'll see that it opens up and gives us even more information. So in the general option here, you'll see that you get lots of information about the user, the date, the device, the IP, the location, the ISP, all of that, again, is available to you. Now, if you go and look at the user tab, for example, you'll get even more information again. So we can see that our users on the left there are grouped by what sort of user are they, internal administrator. In the bottom left, you'll note that there is an action. So you can go in and actually take an action and say, block this user, force a password reset, do whatever you want there. We'll show you that when we get to the demo. We get more summary information. And then if we go and have a look at the IP address tab, you can see the IP address. Now, the advantage of that is, so let's say that you get an alert from this IP address, which looks a bit suspicious. What we may want to do is actually go in and run a query across our data quickly and easily to see if that IP address has occurred with any other requests. So using that information, we can do that quickly and easily in this cloud app security environment to do that. So with that said, again, it all looks good on the screen, but how does it actually work in detail? So I'm already logged into my environment here. I've gone to the Security and Compliance Center. So let me just show you firstly where you would need to go in and turn on the audit logging. Oops, you would go into the search option here and you would select the option down here that says audit log search. So if you select that, you should see that your audit log search, there's no banner in there that indicates there are any issues. And what I can do quickly is go in here and do a quick search for some data. So let me just look at any accessed file, do a quick search. You'll see that you can go in here and filter the query by date. You can filter it by users. You can also filter it by files and folders as well. So we've done that. These are all the results here. We can go in and we can actually filter these results here by selecting this option up here. This will give a header up here. So if I go in here and let's see, have I been doing anything recently? Okay, so now it's filtered to the admin user, the IP address, and if I want, I can go and export that to Excel to get more information. So go in, make sure that your audit logs are indeed turned on. Now your other alerts are up the top here. Again, if you go into this option and you have a look at your alerts policies, these are your protection alerts. So you'll see the customized ones, which are not bolded, and the customized ones, which are Microsoft ones I've put in there. Again, to see any detail on that, just click on it. You'll get all the details in there. You can edit the policy and create whatever you want there by hitting that new alert policy. Now, if you have Cloud App Security enabled in your environment in any way, shape, or form, you'll have the Managed Advanced Alerts option here, and you can go into this button here, which will then take you basically to the dashboard that you see here. So here is our Office 365 Cloud App Security that I have configured. The place to start, as I mentioned, is in templates. So these are the templates that Microsoft has provided. Microsoft will add these over time. We can take these and then convert these basically into a policy by hitting the plus symbol at the end there. You'll see that the linked policies indicate that I'm using this one already in my environment. So I have created basically a policy based on that template. So once you've worked out what policies you want, you will take the templates and create these policies. So you've got 41 policies here through a variety of options. Now, if we have a look at them, let's have a look at the mass download, for example. Across the page, you'll see its severity. You'll see the actions that it's taking. It's going to create an alert for me. I can go in and I can edit the policy. I can also look any matches that are happening, plus I can take any activity that is also potentially happening down this end. Now, if I drill into it, all I'm going to do is click on it. Now you'll see how this policy is created. You'll see that the filter for this policy is I'm waiting for repeated activity. So I want 50 of these activities to occur in a minute. That will then generate the alert for me. And the match is when the activity type equals a file download. So that's what I want to know. So basically what this is, I consider a mass download to be more than 50 files in 1 minute. So that's going to trip an alert. When it does, what action do I want to take? Well, I certainly want to get an alert. You'll see that I'm sending myself an email to let me know that that's happened. I can also send text messages potentially, but down here is the real power, I think. You can connect this up to Power Automate to create flows that will take further action. So maybe you, again, want to log something in SharePoint. Maybe you want to actually send an email, change an external dashboard, whatever you can do with that. And then finally down here, we have our governance. We can, in this case, suspend the user, require them to sign in again, and confirm that the user has been compromised. All right, so that is how easy it is to go in and edit a policy. Let me just quickly show you a custom one that I have created. Again, this is the one for my global admins. So you'll see here the query is a little bit more complex. So it's basically when the IP address is not a corporate IP address and the activities are log on by a user who is from an administrative group, and then I want to generate an alert. So that is going to pop that one out when a global administrator does that. Now, when they do get when those do trip, you'll see here that these are recorded as alerts. And again, you can overload yourselves quite quickly and easily with alerts. Let's go and look at this failed login attempt here. All right, so these are the details. Let's drill into it even more. So here are the general details. The failed alert, it was how it worked, where it was from, trying to log into SharePoint from a Windows 10 machine. That is the location and the ISP. If I now go in and look at the IP address, I get information about that. So I see there are 186 activities from that IP address. Now you'll see what I can do down here under IP addresses. If I scroll down a little bit, you'll see that I can say, well, you know what, that actually is a corporate IP address. I want to tag that as a VPN address, which is causing this issue. So I can take actions directly from there. And again, I can go in and look at activities of the same type, the same user activity. So what else is this user who stripped this alert actually doing? Same IP address and also activities for the same region. So I can start creating those custom queries quickly and easily. Now that is my alerting arrangement. They were obviously generated from those policies. But as I said, you can go up here and you can look at the activity logs. The activity log actually shows me every activity that is actually happening. So again, if I go in here and click this, for example, this will tell me that it's run aggregated threat file details, and I can drill into that and get more information. So this is my day-to-day activity. This is actually the event log of what's happening, but you'll see this is far more powerful than you see in the unified audit logging, because again, there is far more details in here as to what is, and again, what's going on in your environment. So you'll see that in this case, I have successfully logged in, and I've logged in from a machine that is in Azure, which means it's on this virtual machine, which is exactly the machine that I'm showing here. So we find that basically under the investigate, one of the other options here is to investigate your OAuth tokens. So these are tokens that have potentially permissions across your environment. And what we can do with these OAuth tokens, we can again investigate them. We can say, well, hang on, that's interesting. Who's actually using this OAuth token? What's involved? We can then nominate it as approved. We can also then say, well, it's not approved. We can ban it, so it will be blocked and won't be added in the future. And we've also, again, can report that out for people to go and have a look at. So again, that is under the investigate in the OAuth apps option. Now at the very top here, you'll see that if we look at our dashboard, you'll see that we get the man with the glasses looking at it. That's what tells us that we haven't got the full feature set. So again, what we can do here is you get an idea by clicking on it of the sort of reports that you can spit out from this environment with a more fully featured environment. But luckily, I do have one of those that I can show you. So this is the full Microsoft Cloud App Security that is in my production environment. You'll see that it has that additional icon up the top. It has a number of additional actions on the menu, but basically it's the same thing. We go in, we go in and we create our policies there. And then we would take from our templates, and then we would go in and go from there. Now, let me just give you an example of what the differences are. So let me go in and look at discovered apps. So this, again, is a far more fully featured environment. You'll see all the apps that I'm using on a regular basis. So if I go in here and do a search for something like GitHub, you'll see this will give me all the details on how much GitHub has been used across my environment. If I click on GitHub, it will now give me more details basically about that. I can see that I have 2 active users, 4 total IP addresses, and I can then start drilling into this information and get more details. So if I go into info, again, I get that low-level detail of that app. Let's go in and have a look at the users. So you'll see that I'm probably the main offender here with 18 meg of traffic up and down to GitHub. So these are some of the additional power and features that you get with the fully baked Microsoft high-end cloud app security option. All right, now the last thing I'll point out to before we go back to slides is we do have a number of settings up here that we can configure. You'll see that in here we can link it to conditional access. We can define our IP ranges. So that's where I would define my corporate IP ranges or trusted IPs, maybe perhaps. Again, we've got lots of options here. The other one I will point out to is the API documentation. So the great thing about this is we can also get to this with an API. So if I pop out and go to PowerShell and just run this pre-canned PowerShell script that I have created, you'll see that what this does is it logs into my Cloud App Security, and it will then report basically all the policies that I have in place and let me know whether they're true and enabled. So again, this is one of the benefits of the Microsoft environment, is the fact that we can tap into these sort of tools like PowerShell scripting to give us that configuration as well. Now, apart from cloud app security, one of the technologies that I'm really, really excited about that Microsoft has brought out and recommend you go and have a deep dive into to give you more details and analysis is Azure Sentinel. So this is an Azure service. Basically, spin up your Azure portal, go into a search for Azure Sentinel. What this does, in essence, it will take data connectors from your various cloud and on-prem environments, and one of those connectors is Cloud App Security. So you can feed the results of Cloud App Security into Azure Sentinel, along with things like your Active Directory, identity protection, threat protection, and even your on-prem devices as well. You can then take the analytics and the analysis that Microsoft provides, and as you can see, there are 98 that I'm currently implementing there, and they will analyze that data that is ingested into Azure Sentinel for you and produce those sort of results. And you can then go in and perform low-level queries. You can create dashboards. You can do a huge range of stuff. So Cloud App Security, I think, is fantastic in the Microsoft 365 environment, but most environments also include things like on-prem servers, and I will be certainly looking at using Azure Sentinel as another approach, another weapon in your arsenal to monitor and manage your environment. So to round things off for this session, have a look at all the passive technologies you have available today. So turn on the logs, extend the logging, turn on all the options to make sure you're getting all the information you can. Then have a look at how you can, again, implement those fully, then look at what you can actively add to that environment. So for example, if you've got a default tenant, a simple tenant, maybe you can add the Cloud App Security to that environment to get that additional logging feature on top of what is there by standard. All right, and then work out what is available. So I'd be looking again at something like Azure Sentinel, which is going to be an add-on to every tenant. It's very, very cheap in what it can provide, but it should be, in my opinion, added on to every tenant as an analysis tool. And then implement and integrate all the technologies together. So have your signals feeding in, turn on the right buttons so they're all integrated together. Much easier in a Microsoft environment, obviously. And then test your security. What happens when a user fails a login? Does it alert? Does it show? Where do the alerts end up? So you know exactly what's happened. And then obviously the good thing about security that you'll have to do is rinse and repeat. So we need to go through that process iteratively on a regular basis to do that. Now I have got some links there for you that dive into Cloud App Discovery and Security, setting it up, managing it, and the documentation. Again, those slides I'll make available shortly after this event. I think we're pretty much to time. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the investment you've made. If you do want to reach out to me, my details are there, director@ciaops.com, also on the Twitter. So I thank you for paying attention and the time. And let me have a look at any questions that we have in the queue. So I think I have one there basically for the staff to answer. Seems that firstly that the prize draw is only available during the week of the session. Again, so beware of that. I will basically push that one off to the admins to ask about the specifics around a prize. One of the questions here is from Dan. Cloud App Security benefits from an E5 SKU is one E5 license per tenant. I would suggest to you that you have a look at the documentation, Microsoft's official stance on it. I will make sure that there is a PDF available on the licensing. Microsoft's response to this is every user that derives benefit from that service needs to have a license for it. So that is the stance. I'm not a licensing expert on that, but that is the stance that, again, Microsoft will want you to consider when you are doing licensing. Another question from Dan is, do you have any recommendations around seeding fake high-value data? Again, at the end of the day, you need to, as I mentioned in the list there, you need to go in and test these things. So for example, one of the things I would do as a red team when I'm helping customers get this all set up is to run a password spray attack. So definitely, yes, I would use the tools that are available readily on the internet and run something like a password spray attack and make sure that that is appearing in the logs, it is alerting, and the actions are taking place. So the answer is yes, you regularly need to run red team events on your environment to make sure that the expected alerts are happening. And you also need to review those. So even if no alerts are coming through, it should be a process to go in and look at each one of those. So data in cloud app security, also from Dan, Sentinel, is this read only? No. So basically what we can do is think of the data in there as something we can extract. So you can use the API, you can use PowerShell, the Azure Sentinel, you use the Custo query language, you can spit it out because basically it's sitting on a log analytics workspace. So yes, the data's in a pool or reservoir, but you can access that data, export it, pull it out, look at the logs in detail. You can do that with Azure AD logs as well. So I have PowerShell scripts that go in and report on various items and filter out the logs to find exactly what I need. So one of the ones I wrote recently was a PowerShell script to go in and look for users that reset their password, and that would spit it out to a CSV file that we can use. Okay, so again, if you want to protect from insiders, Microsoft does have technologies around protecting from malicious insiders that you need to investigate. So that is supported in the Microsoft environment. And a thank you from Julian. So again, thank you very much, Julian, for your time. Hopefully I seem to have answered all the questions in the queue. Let me just again finalize here. Are there any further questions before we call it quits for today? Again, I thank you very much for your time. Hopefully I've covered all those answers for you. And if you have missed anything, don't forget to go in and view the recording and all the other fantastic recordings that are going to be happening through the month of May. Once again, we'll call out a special vote of thanks to all the sponsors and to all the people working behind the scenes that have made this possible. I hope that you've got value out of today's session, and remember that the sessions continue all throughout May. You can sign up for them. They will be recorded and available after the fact if you can't make all of them. And do take advantage of them because there's lots and lots of presenters. The opportunity's been given to many people who don't normally present, who have special insights into their environment. So please do take advantage and also make sure that you support them so that they continue to share their information with the community. So again, thanks to the anonymous person for the refresher on the this environment. Appreciate that. Really great to have that feedback. Thanks again, Nikki, for that excellent feedback. Again, call for a last round of any questions before we call it quits and get on with enjoying the rest of our Saturday. Again, wait a minute or two, make sure there are no final questions. Thank you very much for your investment in time. Remember that you can always contact me on the Twitters or on the socials for any follow-up, anything that pops into your head after the fact. But I see no further questions coming in the queue. So I would suggest that this session is as good as done. Thank you very much, everybody.